And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this podcast, we continue with examples of the aggregate expenditure model. And so, as always, we have our aggregate expenditure curve with consumption and planned investment, government spending, net exports. We have our equilibrium, which is where the 45-degree line hits the aggregate expenditure curve. Production is equal to spending, and so there's no changes in inventories. That's what makes this the equilibrium. And then we get some change, and our change in this case is the government passes a stimulus package, and so the government is going to begin spending more money. So this determinant, this one's really easy. My determinant is going to be, or really straightforward, I should say, is going to be a change in government spending. So if the government's spending more money, then that just means that government spending is going to increase. There's my increase in government spending. And as a result of that, aggregate expenditures are going to increase. So the aggregate expenditure curve is going to shift up here to aggregate expenditure curve 2, and let's see, that means, so government goes out and they start buying things. That means total spending is going to rise. Spending is now greater than production, and that's going to cause inventories to fall, and when inventories fall, companies respond by increasing production. That will continue until we get here to our new equilibrium point where spending is equal to production again, and that new equilibrium will be here at gross domestic product Y2. Y2. And so what happened here was we had an increase in aggregate expenditures. Curve shifts up, and that causes an increase in gross domestic product. And this is very much of a very typical Keynesian idea. We'll talk more about this guy, John Maynard Keynes, on a future podcast, but he's the guy that developed this whole Keynesian cross idea and the aggregate expenditure model. And Keynes would say during times of slow economic growth or during times of recession, then you would get an increase in government spending. Government will spend against the wind is how it might be said. And so we'll talk more about that on future podcasts. For now, very straightforward argument here. Increased government spending. There's more spending. Aggregate expenditure shifts up. Spending is greater than production. That causes inventories to fall, and companies respond by increasing production. Production increases from Y1 to Y2. So what's our rule? Our rule just says if you get an increase in government spending, that means the curve is going to go up. If you get a decrease in government spending, the curve is going to shift down. So pretty straightforward on this one. And by the way, there's the category is the determinant. So it's just changing government spending. You don't need to add any other thing. Like when we did, for example, consumption wealth, it would be change in consumption wealth. So we did that on a previous podcast, and there would be the category and then the actual specific determinant. Not the case here. The change in government spending is it. It is the category and the determinant all in one. Okay, so let's get rid of that stuff because that's really not part of this particular example. Change in government spending. Increase government spending, curve shifts up. Decrease government spending, curve shifts down. Thanks for joining me. This has been Mr. Hagan on another podcast. See you on the next podcast.